For the first time in human history, fear existed. Two people who had never known shame were hiding. Their hearts were pounding. Their hands trembled as they stitched leaves together, trying to cover a feeling they could not fully understand. The air in the garden felt heavy and unfamiliar, and then came the sound that changed everything. Footsteps. Footsteps that once brought comfort. Footsteps that once meant peace. Now, they brought fear. Nothing in the world would ever be the same again. Not long before this moment, the world was exactly as it was meant to be. There was no pain, no guilt, no brokenness, and no death. God had created the heavens and the earth, shaping the land and the seas, filling the skies with birds and the waters with living creatures. Everything existed in perfect balance, and every part of creation reflected beauty, order, and purpose. At the center of this perfect world was a garden called Eden. It was more than a place to live. It was a place of peace, life, and close relationship with God. Adam and Eve lived there freely, without fear or shame. God walked with them. He spoke with them. They lacked nothing. The garden was filled with trees that were beautiful to look at and good for food. Every need was met. Among these trees stood two that were different from the rest. One was the tree of life. The other was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God gave Adam and Eve freedom. They could eat from every tree in the garden except one. He warned them not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, saying that if they did, they would die. This command was not meant to take away their joy. It was meant to protect them. It was an invitation to trust God. For a time, everything remained perfect. Adam and Eve worked in the garden, cared for creation, and lived in harmony with God and with each other. There was no fear of tomorrow and no reason to doubt. Then a new voice entered the story. Among all the creatures God had made was a serpent, clever and deceptive. One day, the serpent approached Eve near the forbidden tree. It did not force her or threaten her. Instead, it asked a simple question. Did God really say, "You must not eat from any tree in the garden?" The question twisted the truth. God had not forbidden all the trees, only one. Eve answered, explaining that they were allowed to eat from the trees, but not from the one in the middle of the garden. She said eating from it would bring death. The serpent then challenged God's word directly. "You will not surely die," it said. "God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." With those words, the serpent planted doubt. It suggested that God was holding something back, that God could not be fully trusted. Eve looked at the tree again. The fruit looked good. It was pleasing to the eye and seemed to promise wisdom. In that moment, the choice was no longer just about fruit. It was about trust. Would she trust God's word or her own desire? Eve took the fruit and ate it. Then she gave some to Adam, who was with her, and he ate it too. At first, nothing dramatic happened, but inside them, everything changed. Their eyes were opened, not to wisdom, but to shame. For the first time, they became aware of their nakedness. They felt exposed and afraid. They tried to cover themselves by sewing fig leaves together. Later, when they heard God walking in the garden, they hid. This was the first time humans had ever hidden from God. God called out, "Where are you?" Adam answered, saying he was afraid because he was naked. God asked how he knew this and whether he had eaten from the tree he commanded them not to eat from. Instead of taking responsibility, Adam blamed Eve. Eve then blamed the serpent. Trust was broken. Blame entered the world. God spoke about the consequences of their actions. Life would now include pain, struggle, and hardship. The ground would no longer produce easily. Relationships would be strained. Death entered the human story. Adam and Eve could no longer remain in the Garden of Eden. They were separated from the tree of life and sent out into the world. Yet even in this moment, God showed mercy. He clothed Adam and Eve, covering their shame. And he made a promise that one day, evil would be defeated and humanity would be restored. Adam and Eve left the garden together, stepping into a broken world, but God did not abandon them. From that moment on, he began working to bring humanity back to himself. The story of the fall explains why the world is broken, why pain exists, and why humans struggle between right and wrong. But it also tells us that from the very beginning, God had a plan to save and restore. The fall is not just the story of how sin entered the world. It is also the beginning of the story of hope.